Pat Sabatini is on Fitz Nation. You know him as a UFC featherweight grappling ace. Are you a black belt, Pat?
Yes, sir. Got my black belt back in 2014. So
Nice,
I've been
man.
a black belt for a little bit.
Wow. Well, look at you. I mean, and then you got to the UFC all these years later. Why did it take you so long to go from black belt to UFC, man? What's
I don't
tougher?
know, man, but I'm glad. I'm glad it did because I feel like all the experiences that came between, only added to the moments in the
Yeah.
UFC.
Yeah, man. I've been obsessed recently, especially with the journey. I feel like once you start getting older, I mean, you're 32, you're getting up there enough to be mature. I don't mean that in a negative way, right? But up there enough to get the life experience on your side of things. Like, how would you describe it for you? Because it took you a long time to get to the UFC relative to your record and also relative to like your age. You know, you see guys coming in out 23, they're 7-1. What were you? You were like 15-1 or something like that by the time you got to the UFC.
Yeah, I believe I was 12 or no 13-3 when I got to the UFC.
Yeah. What I mean, how would you describe your fighting journey until you got to the UFC?
So, everything was going really good. And then, I ended up getting an arm injury. And it was kind of a fight where, I think if I did good, I could have got that call. But
Yeah.
having that setback kind of, made me face some adversity. And I feel like that made getting into the UFC when it did happen, just ever so sweet. And I feel like all the experience I picked up going through that and along the way, and especially my last couple fights at CFFC,
Yeah.
helped prepare me for the UFC.
Um, and for those who don't know, weren't you supposed to debut against Rafael Alves? And he missed weight
Yeah,
by 11 pounds or something like that?
yeah, we actually got the call, I believe, a week out or 6 days out. I think I
Yeah.
lost like 27 pounds or something crazy, and then we showed up to the scale, and I'll never forget seeing Sean Shelby walk over, and it looked like something was wrong, and he told us what was up, and we were
Yeah.
amazed that he missed weight by that much.
Yeah. Alves is I think he moved up to the lightweight division. I think his wife had a miscarriage the night before. Did you hear that whole story?
I did hear that, sir. It's very
Yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah. It was really sad. But for you, it's like I just remember it was like Paul Felder was telling us of it, like, hey, this kid can grapple, man. He's good. Like he's gonna start making some waves. And then I was gutted that you didn't get to show it that weekend. Why did you get into combat sports? Wrestling was the background, right?
No, actually, I did jujitsu quite a bit of time before wrestling, so I'm kind of the
Okay.
opposite. It's usually
So
wrestle good
you
as the
started
jujitsu.
with jujitsu and then it led to wrestling because obviously the high schools don't have a jujitsu team. They have wrestling teams.
Hmm.
Why
Yeah.
combat sports for you, Pat?
So I've always been interested in the UFC. It's always been something I've wanted to do ever since watching UFC one. With Hoist Gracie and everything. But when I was about 16, 17, I was like, you know what, I want to try this. And I had my first amateur fight at 17 and been hooked since.
Yeah. Why do you think that you liked it though? Like a lot of people in Philly, like they play team sports, they'll play basketball, they'll play football, baseball, that all those traditional sports. You know, obviously combat sports is big, especially in Pennsylvania. Wrestling is big and that area of the country. But for you, like what gripped you about the one-on-one thing?
So I feel like with individual sports, all the pressure's on you. Everything's on you. You can't really depend on anybody else when you're in there. Obviously, your coaches are there, your teammates are there. It's this sport, like, definitely is a team sport, but obviously, it is an individual sport as well.
Yeah.
But I like being in there. I like making my own decisions, and everything's on me at the end of the day, win, lose, or draw.
Were you what were you like growing up?
So I was a little bit like wild when I was real young. I was
Uh-huh.
getting bullied, and right around kindergarten, my parents got me into karate, and that actually turned into jujitsu.
Yeah.
My instructor at the academy, got into jujitsu, but I've always been like pretty, mild mannered. After getting into the martial arts, I feel it definitely like balanced me out a lot.
Right. Like your shirt says Mr. Nice Guy.
I think
Is
my
that
buddy
your
moved
new
it.
nickname? Do we have a new nickname?
No,
Oh,
no,
no
it
more
actually
Mr. Nice Guy.
yeah.
Oh, then so the new nickname is no more Mr. Nice Guy. I know you to be nice, Pat. Yeah.
Nice outside the ring, not so nice inside the ring.
You're one of these very like stoic fighters, right? Like you
Thank
have
you.
not tried to splash on the scene in terms of talking a lot, in terms of calling people out. What is that like for you, knowing that like you see the whole game and you see a quick rise by some other guy, but knowing that you're not that type of guy?
I'm always going to be myself. I feel like a lot of guys try to, be somebody else, try to make noise to get their name out there more, which is, a good strategy and everything. But I'm just going to stay true to who I am. Whoever they throw at me, I'll fight. And when it comes time to get someone in the top 15 or whatever, if that day comes, hopefully that day comes, I'll be ready. And when it gets here, I'll be ready.
Yeah. Can you explain who you are? Because a lot of people will say that they don't want to trash talk. They're saying, I want to be true to myself. I want to stay authentic. I applaud all of that. I think that's the best way to live. Who are you? If somebody's just like, fine, then who are you? Like, what is your authentic self? How would you say that? How would you describe yourself?
I'm a real big family person. Outside of the ring, I'm very calm, mild mannered. But when it comes time to do business, when it comes time to get the sparring rounds in the room, I turn into somebody else, and I blank out, and all my training comes to the surface, and I just let it go.
Who do you turn into?
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Definitely
No,
somebody
like
else.
I mean, that's a very interesting thing to me is like a lot of fighters are just the nice Brandon Moreno. One of those guys. He's just like, I send a different person inside the octagon. How do you
Absolutely.
do that? How do you do that?
I honestly, one thing that I think happens is like my thought process changes. We're here talking, we're thinking about what we're gonna say and stuff like
Yeah.
that. When it comes time to make that walk, I eliminate all the deep thinking and just shallow thoughts. Let the training take over, and there's a reason why we put so many hours into the gym, so that our subconscious can take over, and you're reacting in there. You're not thinking too much, and you know thinking takes too long.
Is it almost like living in a dream state?
Yes,
Can you
yes,
describe what it's like? Cause like you have power over your body and your thoughts, and yet, like you say, you don't want to go too deep into it. Cause if you start thinking too much, then you're toast. You're just gonna get crushed.
exactly. It's like I see something, boom, there's a reaction, or I'm feeling a certain type of way. I feel like this person's going to do this, so I'm going to do that. It's just very, very on the fly type of thinking, but kind of used to that as far as in the fights and with the training. So it
Yeah.
it benefits me not to think too much.
How did you learn that?
It's definitely come with time. A lot of mistakes made on the road. Taking note of what works, dismissing what doesn't work. I would have to answer your question with just one word: experience.
Yeah. Just reps.
Yes,
Keep on
yes,
going.
sir. hmm
I want to talk about several different topics like that have helped you get to where you are. Because I think that's where we can most glean from you guys. Nobody's getting in a well, I shouldn't say nobody. I would imagine some fighters are listening to my show, but I think my show is for the fan. And we're not like by and large climbing into a cage to fight. What, Pat, I've been thinking about this the past couple of days. Not goals, but disciplines. What are your disciplines? If you get what I mean. Obviously, your goal is to be a champ. But
hmm
what do you do day in, day out? Like, what are your specific disciplines that you don't want to miss because if I do these, my body's right, my mind is right, and I can live how I want to live?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before either. I think that certain disciplines, obviously, you are what you do day in and day out. So you got to make your habits good habits that are gonna, carve a path for you to do what you want to do. For
Right.
me, I wake up in the morning, meditation. I love to meditate. It could be like
How
10,
long?
15 minutes. 10, 15 minutes.
10,
Nothing.
15 minutes. That's your first thing. Wake up, meditate.
Wake up, meditate. Then I feel like diet is key. Like, after a fight, you kind of eat everything.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of binging out a little bit, but I think diet is super, super important. Even outside of camp, I try to track my calories, my meals, and obviously balance is another part of discipline. You can't just go too hard for too long. You got to make sure
Right.
you're complementing that with rest and with activities outside of the gym. But keeping my training balanced too is another part of the discipline, because big problem I would have my whole career would be just overtraining.
Yeah.
Overtraining is just as bad as undertraining. So making sure my training is in line and making sure that I'm putting time into other outlets outside of the gym, like fishing. I don't know. Some people like video games, spending time with your friends, family. Uh, if I had to, if I had to add anything else to this question, I would probably say, discipline of this. Making sure that conditioning the mind, I feel like, is
Yeah.
the most important thing.
What part of your daily routine is it still discipline where you like, I got to do this because it's good for me, but it's kind of tough?
It happens quite. I kind of, feel that quite often. I just have like a certain criteria that I give myself each week. Like I have
Yeah.
to get this many sessions in of, for example, strength and conditioning.
Right.
This many times sparring a week. This many times drilling this. And once I meet those criterias, then it's good. But
You write it all down.
yes, yep, write it down.
How do you
Uh,
do your journaling, or like, how do you do your organization like that so that you don't miss?
Man, I've been writing a lot of stuff down over the last year, actually less than a year.
Hmm.
Um, as far as like plays that me and my coaches will run in sparring to take to the cage, um, training schedule inside and outside of camp, and it's good because you get to see the demographic. It's not so much everything in your head cluttered. It's a lot more organized.
Yes. Pat, I am on that train recently. I
Good.
like write down so much, and a big benefit is because you will go crazy if you try to keep track in your own head. It
The
can't
first.
happen. You'll just never not nothing will always you will never cross it all off the list because you'll forget about it until it's too late, and then
Mhm.
you'll get down on yourself for the fact that I wanted to do that 3 weeks ago and I still haven't done it, and it's just sitting on my to-do list. I'm telling you, man, writing stuff down with a pen and paper, not on a computer, not on an app, not on a phone, pen
Pen
and
and
paper.
paper. Pen and paper.
Yeah,
The first time someone told me to start writing stuff down, I looked at them like, yeah, what's that gonna do? But it makes
right.
all the difference.
There's so many tracking apps, and they can work, but then you're in your phone. And what else is in your phone? Probably stuff that's going to waste your time, right?
Absolutely.
And like stuff that's going to waste your time, where they pour many dollars into engineering your attention and engineering like an addictive kind of app. Like I'll go into my phone to, let's say, track something. And then like before I know it, I'm 15 minutes into Instagram. And I'm just like, how did I get here? You know?
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
It
it's
just
wild.
time just gets wasted so much.
How
That's
do
another.
you how d yeah, like, how do you approach social media as a fighter? As somebody that can gain a lot from it if you do it a certain way, but also knowing that it can be a time suck.
I've definitely found myself being on my phone too much on apps and whatnot, like Instagram, Facebook. I actually make sure that I don't go on my phone past a certain hour. I don't like to just start scrolling as soon as I wake up either.
Yeah.
Because everywhere you go, you see people, their heads are like buried in that phone. There's so
Yeah.
much more to life, you know?
I'm ready for the 90s, man. I'm ready for the 90s again.
I'm ready for the 80s.
You're ready the 80s? What do you know about the 80s? You weren't even around.
I know, man. It looks like it's cool era to grow up in, though.
I call my, like, I was born in 82, so it's mostly 90s in terms of like what you remember and how you grew up. And it is wild to even think about, like, when you watch old TV shows and people are walking around, it's just like, yeah, if they didn't know like where to meet you, then it wasn't going to happen because they didn't have a
Exactly.
phone. Nobody had a way to contact you. It's just like such an organic way of life. From the discipline conversation, I'm glad you said writing stuff down. I've been obsessed with that. Big piece of advice from me to anybody out there who's like, yeah, but I wouldn't write stuff down. I've tried to journal and it hasn't worked out. Get yourself a good pen. Like, spend like $60 on a pen, honestly. Like, this pen is by Baron Fig, and they don't pay me or anything, but their customer service just treated me amazing recently. And so honestly, Pat, like, I started writing a ton of stuff down after I got like a real nice pen. I'm just like, gosh, I spent a bunch of money on a pen. Like, you know, a pen could be 5 cents or free at the dentist office, but I want to write with this good pen. It feels good in my hand. It's heavy. It's good to write stuff down. And now look at me. I got this notebook, Pat. I got this notebook. I got this notebook. I'm like all over the place with the notebooks, but never been more organized and productive. So I'm glad you said that. That's
I'm glad I said it too. That's awesome.
What about your goals? So if disciplines are the way to get there, like, do you have tangible goals, and what are they?
So I feel like a lot of people get caught up with looking too far ahead. I try to, look just what the next step and only the next step, one step at a time. And right now, my goal is maybe I haven't put a time. I don't even want to put a time frame on it.
Yeah, time is bad on it, honestly.
I want a number next to my name.
You want to be a ranked contender.
Yes, sir.
In the UFC. That's the next thing.
That's the next thing.
Do you have like UFC champion, or do you just say that doesn't apply to me right now?
I definitely have that in mind, but down the road,
Yeah.
I say one thing at a time, but that's obviously the ultimate goal. I feel like if you're in the UFC, why
be in it?
Goal? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that's on the near horizon?
As far as competition, or
no, just as far as like goals. Like, is it just like ranked fighter in the UFC, or is it like I want to be a ranked fighter in the UFC and I have these other things I'm trying to do? Are there other things that you're trying to do?
Honestly, that's the biggest goal right now, and obviously, make money. Invest in the right things, and this way, life just start paving the path of life to come.
Yeah. What are you trying to subtract? So my basis for the question is, if you go on YouTube or, follow these inspirational people or successful people that have a great physique or a great career or a great podcast or a great fighting career, whatever it happens to be, and somebody might ask them, what's your key to success? Or like, what do you think you do well, or whatever it is? And then we might be like, well, I get up in the morning, I meditate, then I go in the sauna, then I take a cold plunge, then I journal, then I like to get my first strength and conditioning session in for the day, then I like to do drilling, then I like to do another like a billion things, right? Then I like to read 10 pages a day. Like, there's so many things. I've fallen prey to this like 1,000 times. Like, this is my constant problem, is trying to do too much. What are you maybe doing too much of that you're like, this doesn't help me achieve my goal of being a ranked UFC fighter, so I'm going to try to leave it behind a little bit?
That's another great question that I've never been asked before, but I already know the answer, and it has been subtracted, and I just have to continue to do so.
Yeah.
And as far as, obviously, keep walking that line of discipline, but subtracting the overtraining. I feel like that has been something that has hurt me physically, mentally.
Yeah.
And it's, man, it's, it's crazy is going into a fight, not wanting to be there, and going into a fight and not wanting to be anywhere else. It's a totally different experience. And I feel like overtraining would, kind of deplete my whole will of being in there. Because when it came time to the fight, I feel like it was just, it wasn't there. But when it's just enough and the balance is there at the training, oh, there's no other place you want to be.
So use those words again. When you get into a fight, you don't want to be there, or when you
So,
get into
but
a
when you,
fight and you wouldn't rather be anywhere else.
yes. So I feel
Yeah.
like overtraining is, like I said, has been something that I've dealt with my whole career, and I feel like I'm just starting to subtract that, and balancing out my training a little bit better.
Yeah.
This past camp was great because I did that, and I'm going to continue to do so.
How do you do it? How have you been pulling back? What was the issue of the overtraining?
Man, sometimes I would just get so gung ho mentally. I'm like, you got to myself, I'd be like, you got to push. I know you're not feeling good today, but you got to go, got to go, grind, grind, grind. It's not always the answer. Working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Uh, if I have a day where I'm feeling a little bit banged up, ease it back, save it for the next day.
Right.
That kind of thing. It's a
Was it
big
strength
difference.
and conditioning, or was it like just like doing too much sparring?
Too much sparring. If I
Yeah.
had to say, if I had to, a little bit of both, but I
Right.
would say more so too much sparring.
Yeah. What fight have you been in the UFC and been at a fight and been like, I don't want to be here. I've burnt myself out already.
2 fights ago, for sure.
Which one? Damon?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Too
Well,
hard, huh?
it was just mentally and physically, it wasn't clicking, man.
Yeah.
But it was a totally, totally different uh, side of the coin with the experience with that to the last fight. The last
Right.
fight, I was fired up. I'm like, man, I just felt amazing.
Yeah. Well, that was the most emotion you've ever shown in your entire life after you won, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've had a couple times freaking out after a fight, but that's what
Right.
I definitely want to remember.
That
It
was a
was,
big one, man. That was a big one.
yeah.
So that came in June for those people who don't know. Finished the dude in round 2. You absolutely dominated that guy, man.
Thank you.
You were like a dog on a bone in there, man. Start to finish. How
Thank
did
you.
you pull from the Damon Jackson fight, not getting the result you wanted and burnt out? What
Hmm.
did you think in the aftermath? Because I would think that you might be worried you never get it back. Like, was that a worry? Did you ever get worried like, man, I felt burnt out for this fight. I've lost. Like, how's it going to go? I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back to myself. How did you get back to yourself in a better
Oh
version?
man, I feel like every loss I've had has helped propel me to be a better fighter and a better person. It's like you get broken down mentally. It's like, oh my God, this is all I work for.
Yeah.
I came up short. It's very hard, but once you go down to that abyss, you have to regroup or you have to stay there. And obviously, you don't want to stay there. You rebuild yourself and you figure out what went wrong exactly. Why didn't things go the way that I wanted it to go? And you reevaluate. And like I said, too, this isn't a sport of a tough person. This is a sport of a smart person. And you make the proper adjustments in your training and your life, and you get back in there and you do what you got to do. And what works stays. What doesn't work gets thrown to the side, subtracted.
What do you think you found in the abyss? Like, what questions did you answer?
Oh man, I had that question like, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to continue moving forward? And obviously I do. And I was back in the gym like a week later and working on technical things that have been going wrong in training, making proper adjustments, and subtracting bad habits. And month to month to month, that consistent work, and things worked out in June.
Yeah. They sure did. Um, how would you describe training camps? I have training camps written down here because I think it's become a term that is just like lost in the weeds in MMA. Everyone's like, "Oh, my camp this." And whenever we talk to fighters coming in on short notice, they'll say, "Well, I train all the time anyways. I don't really do training camp, so like I'm ready." And then other more established fighters that are getting ready for a big fight, they're just like, "I had an 8-week camp and I prefer 8 weeks to 12 weeks. When I have 12 weeks, it's too long. When I have 6 weeks, I feel like it's not enough. So I have an 8-week camp." And you hear all these different stories about how people set up their training in anticipation for a fight. But really, it just gets thrown under the term training camp, kind of like
Hmm.
in football when they show up in late July and it's very clearly defined. It's like late July, you start the season with training camp, early September, then you're into the season. For fighting, it's different based on every fight, based on every single person. How do you approach that term? And like when you're not getting ready for a fight, how would you
So,
describe that kind of juxtaposition for you?
so another good question. I actually changed my whole approach to the camp. I used to do like an 8-week camp or
Yeah.
7, 8 week camp, but now I just train all the time. This way, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Yes.
And I kind of like having a name or an event pop up like 4 or 5 weeks out. This way, I don't have to think about it as much. But I keep my training consistent, don't like and balanced and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, and right around 4 weeks, I just click a mental switch to start zoning in. But I'm always quote unquote in camp.
Right. For what happens at 4 weeks?
I don't know. I feel like it's a nice number. Like it's a month out from an event, and that's when I feel like you should really start, zoning in on that individual, on that event, and with that purpose of winning.
Because I don't think that you lose a lot of weight. How much?
My
What do you weigh right now?
like 75, I'd say.
75. So you're 30 over.
Yeah,
But you're also kind of recently removed from a fight. But is this normal? Are you 175 normally?
yeah. But like I'm heavy right now for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
weight.
Yeah.
Like 160 to 165 is where I like to.
To
165 more so where I like to stick at.
165, that's where you're floating around on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And
Mhm.
then 4 weeks out, are you 160?
About 160, 165 still.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this past fight though was actually the first time I did a water load,
Okay. Why?
and
Yeah.
it was.
Why is it,
I used to just taper it down, and I
and then
talked
sweat
to.
it out?
Yeah, I would just taper it down, sweat it out a little bit, but I would. The problem was is I would be a little bit dehydrated for just a little too long.
Yeah.
I talked to Charles over at the PI, and we were talking about how to water load and just breaking it down scientifically, the
Right.
benefits of it. And dude, this last weight cut was the easiest weight cut I've ever had in my life
Yeah.
for
My point
45.
being, like, you can zone it. You can feel like if you don't have to lose a crazy amount of weight and like recompose your body at whatever weight class you fight, you can make the zone in time a little shorter, like 4 weeks, instead of like some
Absolutely.
fighters, like Felder needed like 3 months. Like he was like 190. Now he doesn't, but like he was in the 190s. He would crush himself and he'd be at like 175 and it'd be like 20 pounds to go. And he already looked like Mr. Olympus. You know what I mean? And it's just like, man, that's crazy. But yeah, the water loading. So what'd you do? Drink 2 gallons of water a day for a few weeks
Yeah,
or
the
a
two
week?
gallons of water, the Sunday
2 gallons of
before.
water a day for how long?
Well, it was the Sunday before I did 2 gallons, the Monday, a gallon and a half, Tuesday, a gallon and a half, Wednesday, a gallon, and then Thursday,
Cut
I
it all
drank
out.
as needed. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I was still able to eat 3 meals the day before the weigh in. And
Wow. So
yeah,
it's just like all water. It's like all water.
it
Yeah.
came right off, man. It was
Man, that's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah, not many people know this, but I've told several people, and might as well just get it out now. I had a weight loss bet with Safe Saud at the beginning of the year. Now, last year I had it, and I hit it in like 3 weeks. I got from like 222 to 206, but I was eating like crap.
Nice.
You know what I mean? It was like Halloween. I was up at like north of 220. I'm like, I got to dial this in. So he's just like, okay, by what did he say? By December 1st, you got to get to 206. You got to make light heavyweight. So that was pretty easy because you can lose like 6-8 pounds like right away, right? And then it was a matter of, but then he said get to 196 by like January 14th. It was like the first event of the year. And that's over Christmas and whatever. I didn't do what I needed to do, Pat.
Christmas
didn't
is a
do
tough
it.
one.
I didn't do what I needed to do. So I find myself like 206-ish, like the week of, and I didn't want to owe him $500. So I started looking up, like, I was just like, I can get to 196 with a weight cut, you know, a half a fighter weight cut, basically. And I drank 2 gallons of water a day for like 3 days. Then I drank like a gallon and I tapered it off and I sweated out, Pat. I got it done. Got it done on the last day. I put a sauna suit on, walked on the treadmill like 3.5 to 4 for like 90 minutes. I have a sauna at my house. I went in like 2 times like the day before, got it all the way down there, felt like hell for like 10 minutes. And then like I didn't even have a voice. And then I, drank a few. And then like by later that day, I felt light, felt good, was hydrated. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I feel like I should get in there and fight or something, you know? Oh man, I would have got crushed. People are like, yeah, you did a half a weight cut. You know, if I was a real fighter, I would have had to go to 86, you know?
Still won the bet though.
So camps, yeah. I mean, I imagine like the training camp thing is just, I just wonder that, especially when you're like a full-time athlete like that, you know what I mean? Where it's like people just throw around training camps. It's almost just like saying, I love you every time you get off the phone. It's like, it loses its value a little bit.
And I feel like it adds unneeded pressure to the fighter, unneeded stress when you have an enormous amount of weight to lose. If you have to get back in shape and, wait till your camp to start preparing for your next fight. I feel like as professional fighters, we should always be somewhat ready at all times.
Yeah. When are you going to be ready next, Pat?
So I'm going to do the Fury grappling in August up in Boston.
Okay.
The night before the Boston card.
Yeah, 292. Yeah.
I'm looking to fight whenever the UFC comes back to New Jersey or New York, which is, I believe, November. That would be ideal.
Well, November would be Madison Square Garden. So try to get on that one. I don't know if there's a Jersey situation coming up. I don't think there is. Are you from South Jersey or are you from Philadelphia?
So I'm actually from a town called Bristol, Pennsylvania. It's just north
Bristol,
of
Pennsylvania. Got it. Suburbs Philly, not suburbs South Jersey.
Yeah, but right now I live in South Jersey.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I moved.
I mean, it's all the same.
It's all
the same. It's all the same accent. It's all the same sports teams. It's all the same accent. Last question, Pat. What are you working to? Like what? I mean, I guess you already told me that. I'll ask you this way. Anthony Smith told me earlier this year, I was doing a podcast with him. He said, everyone focuses on the fight for the belt and the fight of jockeying for rankings 1 through 5, 1 through 10. He says the real battle is 13 through 20. He says that's the real battle. Getting into the rankings, trying to get a guy that's ranked to fight you when you're not ranked. Once you're in there, everybody knows that you're at 13, 14, 15. They want that number. They want to fight you. You have to defend your ranking. What is that like for you as somebody that's squarely in the middle of that 13 through 20 right now, I would argue?
That's a good
do you agree with that? Do you feel that?
I could definitely see the truth in that statement. Absolutely. It's I feel like everyone, especially at that rank in the UFC, has to be very strategic with who they pick to fight, when they pick to fight, because obviously, everyone wants that belt, everyone wants that number next to their name, and you got to find out which person's the best matchup for you and if they'll take it. And everyone, I feel like, is very picky, with those numbers because, they're very close to breaching that top 10. and or top 15, and they don't want to risk it going against someone that's lower ranked. It's a tough situation, but that's why I don't really call people out. I let the
Yeah.
UFC just tell me what's up and go to work.
Nice, man. Well, congratulations on the big win recently. It's fun to
Thank you,
call.
brother.
It's fun to watch. I know for you it was huge to respond like that, to get back on track. And I'm glad to talk to you in this format. I know I said I'd do it. I told Rob, your manager, I was like, yeah, definitely want to get him on the show. And then International Fight Week happened. I was like, probably should have told him it'd be a few
It's
weeks.
a busy
But
week.
yeah, man, it's a busy summer, that's for sure. There's a ton going on. But for you, man, I'm really excited about where you'll find yourself next. I hope you get that matchup with the top 15 guys so that we can see you in the rankings soon.
Man, I really appreciate it, brother. It's been great talking to you, for real.
Thanks, man. And I'm glad you told me I had great questions every time I asked a question. That was
Dude,
awesome.
you best questions, bro. Through the roof.
I pride myself on that, Pat. We're talking real subjects here. We're talking real life. Glad to learn from you, and good luck in all your disciplines and all your goals. And get yourself a nice pen, Pat. Get yourself a nice pen. It'll improve your journaling even further, my man.
Thank you,
I'll
brother.
talk to you later.
Take care.